And
Hello and welcome to Sales Leaders Institute. I'm Shelley Carney.
and I'm Toby Younis. Thanks for joining us today. We have a very special guest that we're going to introduce you to in just a few moments. Before I make introductions, I want to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that before you leave today, you like our video. YouTube likes it when you like our video. Shelley likes it when you like our video, and I'm sure our guest likes it when you like our video. Share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates, the entirety of your social network, so that we can continue to grow this channel. And finally, if you're not already a subscriber, this would be the ideal time to click on that subscribe button. And when you see the notifications bell pop up, click on the notifications bell, and that way, whenever we start a live stream, you'll be immediately informed and in the know. These are important discussions. Full disclosure, the young lady that I'm introducing you today is my daughter, Sean. She grew up, Sean Lee Younis, but she's been on her own since, I think, going to college. It was kind of where she picked up her independence there. So I'd like to welcome her. I'm going to let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit about her background. So Sean, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and I love that you're my daughter. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk to you as a daughter, but it's always fun to do some business projects too. We have a lot of overlapping philosophies in business, and I've learned a lot from you. And it's nice that we took very different tracks in life, but business is business, whether you're selling apples or computer chips. So.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. So
yeah. I actually grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm gonna tell you stuff you already know about.
Yeah. Well, but the audience doesn't. So.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you've gone into Santa Fe, but it's an amazing place. It's just a cultural mecca. You should tell stories of when you grew up there. It was even more interesting. But we grew up with this beautiful convergence of these different cultures, this unique history in New Mexico, all these overlapping stories that kind of intersected at this one moment and this one time in this very special place. And it's very romantic. It's very it's kind of a storybook, and I think it's something when you live a storybook, you just don't appreciate it. You grow up there, and I know you've got some great stories about how you got out of there. You pretty much put your life on the line to run.
Yeah.
And I felt very much the same. I didn't go to war and to get out of New Mexico, but I was eager to get out and see the world and go find out what was bigger than little old Santa Fe, New Mexico. But in getting out of there, that's when I really grew to appreciate the history and the culture that we grew up immersed in. And so I was able to I went to school out in Virginia because it was a really strong program, and I was a big nerd, and I didn't want to get beat up on a regular basis. So I thought it was a better option to go to a place where kids who raise their hands get supported, and it really paid off. I was, straight A student, and it really helped me blossom intellectually and let me pursue all of my different interests. I was just a very hungry person to learn things. And so I was able to go to the University of Virginia because we were in Virginia. It was in-state, and that's just an amazing program as well that really helped me develop in terms of, it's just so different there. It's really green and humid to start with, but the culture there is very proper, I guess I'd describe it. I don't know if you remember the kids at UVA, they would wear bow ties and suspenders, and the girls would wear flowered dresses, and it was like Oppositeville from Santa Fe, New Mexico. So it was great to see a different culture and to be fostered as a type A personality. And I know you know how that feels, how to get out of the slowness of New Mexico and really get into that speed and really be able to excel. And it's like you've been raised as this fine sprinting racehorse, right? And you've been trotting all your life, but you've just been dying to be in an open field and just run at your top speed. That's what it felt like, is really breaking out of the cultural norm in New Mexico's the land of mañana. That's our nickname.
Right, exactly.
And it's great to take that energy that I had in Virginia and bring it back to New Mexico and just feel like a sprinter in a a slower environment. It really has helped me. I know it served you to just be able to develop as a leader and as a person who inspires other people. And people think I get so much done, and I feel so lazy here compared to the pace I used to be at on the East Coast. I know you probably feel the same. I mean, you were I remember you being up at 5 a.m. with your suit and tie on, and up all night doing projects, going to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning and doing it all over again. And that was just normal. We loved, I remember just loving all the projects. I never felt burdened. I mean, I don't know. How did you feel about that period in Virginia?
It was just as exciting. It was very different from how I had grown up, the slowness of New Mexico. And like you, I was always looking for that opportunity to run at full speed and see what I could accomplish. And Washington was, the Washington metro area, which included the area in Virginia in which we lived, was just that. It was perfect for me. And that's kind of why I never left until I felt like I could retire back to here and slow up. And of course, I haven't actually slowed up. I'm semi-retired and still kind of running at whatever the full pace is here. I always feel like it's a little bit faster than New Mexico. But as long as I'm moving forward, it doesn't make any difference what the rest of the world is doing. I'm happy with it. And I have a partner in Shelley that kind of feels the same way. So, but this isn't about me. This is about you.
Yeah. So we're in Virginia. So I get this degree in architecture, and, I grew up in Santa Fe around all the artists, and I was always artistic. As I just was always making stuff. I was always told, you're such a great artist. But it's kind of like being a really star athlete. Like you go well, I'm a really good athlete, but you don't make a living at that. Only the elite of the elite become professional football players or soccer players. It's just such a small percentage to actually be a successful full-time artist. And I think also it was just normal. It wasn't glamorous to me to be an artist because I grew up with it. So I thought it was responsible to become something professional, something stable. You go and get a full career and then you retire, and the whole thing. You go to college and you get your professional degree. And so I got a degree in architecture, and I loved that. It was just a perfect blend of design and science and math and all the things that I loved all in one. I loved everything about it. And that's where I met my husband, and we started a firm right away, and we just were game on. I mean, we were like the it couple, just doing all these amazing projects and making six figures and just feeling like the whole world was ahead of us. I mean, we had figured it all out. And then the economy collapsed in 2008. As everybody remembers, the bubble burst, and it was just devastating. Most of our clients were actually other architects because we were doing a lot of computer work. We did animations and drawings using the computer that were very advanced, so the people that were hand drafting could use us. They didn't want to learn the computer, so they just hired us. But the first thing you cut when the jobs dry up are the consultants. You say, well, I'll do the measurement myself. I'll do the drawing on paper, and we don't need your computer, your amazing, flashy computer skills anymore. And so we went from six figures to literally zero in a matter of months. And we had just relocated from the East Coast to the West Coast, where my husband's from. And we were our idea was to take the model we had in Virginia, but do it on the West Coast. And just at that same very moment, I found I was pregnant with my first son, and it was kind of a surprise. And I soon, 2 years after that, I had my second son. So right in the midst of all of this crushing financial destruction, I was having babies and figuring that whole role out. And I think the easiest thing for me to do was just be a mom. there was an apocalypse outside and I just shut the doors and I just mommed for 4 years. And I'm a good mom. I like it. It was fun. It was easier to just let go of trying to be anything else or fix other problems. But when I came out of it, we were just in debt, broke, no jobs, babies everywhere, diapers, all that stuff. I mean, it was just the lowest of low. And I was at a crossroads where I had this fantasy that I define I think at some point in your life, you start to define yourself as your career. So I was an architect. I thought of myself as an architect, and I didn't know if I wasn't an architect, who was I? So I had to find out how to shed. I knew there was no future in architecture for me at that time. I tried to make it work and it just wasn't working. So we decided to move back to New Mexico. And it's not like I went, well, I think I'll be an artist. I just was like sitting at home waiting for the economy to recover. And my brother, Jason, who's a 5th generation tinsmith, he's a member of the Spanish Colonial Art Society. Our family's been participating in that. I participated in it as a child. And it comes once a year during the summer. It's really a big opportunity for artists because we get hundreds of thousands of people that come in just for this one event, and they're looking for regional art that's handcrafted. And so I was just scratching my head to figure out how to make a living. And my brother just kind of reminded me, hey, why don't you try Spanish Market again? And kind of just out of desperation and lack of options, my grandmother kind of helped me match with a mentor, and I was matched with, the beautiful Arlene Cisneros Sena, really top artist, very inspirational person. And she took me under her wing and taught me the traditional methods. And I juried into Market. And I think Jason and I did like 3K each, 5K, somewhere in there, in one weekend. And that really proved to me that, wow, I can't live off this one event for the whole year, but if I prepared, I certainly could do even better, and I could feed my babies for this. And also, as you know, the cost of living here, you've lived on the East Coast and the West Coast. Right. There's no comparison. That's correct. Couldn't fantasize about owning a trailer in California. And here we could own property. We have 1/3 of an acre, and it's not a mansion, but it's ours and we own it. We don't have to rent. We don't have to live in a condo that's sub size. And it was nice to be able to think, wow, I could make a lot less here than what I was making in Virginia or what I was aspiring to make in California, and be fine. And it wasn't about lowering your standards of living. It was about changing your vision of what your life is. I think that's one thing a lot of people make the mistake. It's like really just always wanting more. And really it's about defining the space and the lifestyle that you want. That's what's been exciting, is really letting go of old ways of thinking about, what a house is and what success looks like, and really just building the life that you love getting up for every day. I love every part of my job now. So Spanish Market was a success. I took it very serious. I applied all my type A neuroses to that pursuit. And my philosophy is every time the art form that I juried into is retablo painting. It's I should have brought a sample. Well, you have one. You have my Saint Corona,
and a lot of people have seen it.
There's one in the background there, right? Is that her?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's this traditional art form where we paint saints, and we paint images from the Bible on wood boards. And every time I learned a new saint, I would create a print of it. I would create products of it. So that was something that most artists weren't doing. They weren't proliferating their art into a variety of products. And I saw some early success with that. I began to get a reputation with that. That's when you started working with the local television public access channel, and we developed a television show where I demonstrated retablo painting. And I learned pretty early, it would be a tough career to make a full-time career out of making saints. It's a very small particular market, and I love it. I love the healing aspect of making saints, and the connections that I make with people. But it did have a ceiling, and just totally. People say, "How did you get these other?" I fell into some really amazing projects. Did you do it? I wish, but my husband's sister's husband's brother happens to and
oh, she's breaking up.
Okay. My back?
Yeah, you're back. Go ahead, try. So
I'm
you're
back. Okay.
Your
Okay.
husband's sister's brother.
Husband's brother
Okay.
lives here in Albuquerque, and they wanted to do a Day of the Dead beer. They were a alcohol distribution company. And so they were talking to my sister-in-law, and she said, "Well, you got to talk to Daryl and Sean. They're right there in Albuquerque." And so we formed a partnership, and we developed a Day of the Dead beer, and it just exploded. I mean, not literally. It went all over the world. I think we ended up designing about 9 labels, and they've been really successful. They've won awards. They sold 240 million cases of the beer in 1 year. It just was way, way beyond what anyone had expected in terms of the desire for people to buy artwork with the theme that they wanted was Day of the Dead. And when they approached me, I said, I don't know that much about Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead's it's not a New Mexican tradition. It's a Mexican tradition. And I said, okay, well, if we're going to do it, I really don't want to just slap a sugar skull on something and call it Day of the Dead. Let me work on something. And they really gave me carte blanche to just open up. And so I think I told them I wanted to do Art Nouveau pop art or something, and they're like, okay. So we developed all these characters, Day of the Dead themed characters that were inspired by the flavors of the beer, and they all had backstories, and it was really, really fun. I mean, it's just a dream client. They took all the images as they were. They didn't change them at all. And of course, it was very successful. So we followed with a wine label because the people that were selling the beer were like, what else you got? And so we did a theme with that. It was a wedding theme with that. And it did very well as well. That went all over the U.S. And the New Mexico Lottery people saw that. And they invited me to do a New Mexico Lottery Day of the Dead theme inspired by the wine style. And that was very successful. It actually took a first place award in the nation for best scratcher design. First time New Mexico's got an award for that. And it was the first time they used a local artist. So that was pretty cool to see my artwork on billboards and buses. And I mean, it was pretty exciting. But those 3 high profile opportunities got me a lot of press and really defined my brand as a Day of the Dead artist. And so it really fit my personality, the colors and the story behind it. I loved expressing my art through that art form. So I just kind of rolled into it. And so, those 3 projects, I produced 40 images, and I had a body of work just from those 3 products. I was named, I started that in 2013. We did Spanish Market together, Jason and I. And then by 2016, I had received Best Visual Artist from Albuquerque, the magazine. And so that, to me, was the moment where I was no longer an architect. I was an artist. That was kind of important. That was like other people saying, we recognize you as an artist and you're contributing something important. And that was a day I could really take that one hat off and really accept myself as something. And it fit. I mean, it was
You dropped off just a little bit. Did you freeze?
I do traditional retablos. Yeah, I'm freezing a little.
I got you.
Am I
Just keep talking. We
back?
can hear you. Okay. It'll come back.
Okay. So I still keep my retablo line up. I do hopefully Spanish market every year. It's been canceled this year, and hopefully they're going to do an online opportunity for artists. I hope they can do something, because for
Pull
a
that
lot of
together,
artists,
yeah.
it's just so important to have that opportunity. So hopefully they'll find some vehicles for the artists to show their work. And now I call them my saints and my sinners. I have two lines, and really that what they share is, I was like, boy, I have a split personality. These are very different art forms, but really they share supporting Hispanic cultural stories, and they share healing. It's about healing in different ways. Day of the Dead's all about healing from grief and healing from life's wounds, and the saints, of course, there's a saint for everything. So probably a
Including
saint for
your most,
broadcasters.
yeah. Shelley?
So, Sean,
I'll take a breath now.
You gave us a lot of transitions that you went through in your life. What do you attribute your resiliency, your ability to make those transitions and to keep on moving forward?
It's kind of tricky, because I do think that just one thing Dad and I share is that we sort of are at our best when the challenges are up. That's when we're kind of like, oh, I'm ready for this fight. You want to fight? I can fight. I like a good challenge, but let me think about it in a broader sense. I'll compare myself to other people that help me. This is why I'm different.
It freezes up. So let's see if we can get her back. Just, can you hear me?
I hear you.
The question is, can she hear me?
Did I lose you?
Okay, you were about to say the people you were about to explain your resiliency through these transitionary periods, and you wanted to do it in a broader sense.
Okay. Thank you. So when I watch other artists who I see are struggling, I can identify some specific things that I'm doing that they're not. And that's probably a whole presentation. Yeah. But in general, I would say it's about treating yourself as much as a professional as I was as an architect. I treat myself as a professional, as an artist. And so I try to create a 9-to-5 atmosphere, even though there's no one telling me what time to be at work. Did I lose you again?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. And I write professional emails. I write professional biographies. I do all my own writing. I do all my own photography. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people say. They just don't treat themselves like professionals. They treat themselves like amateurs. And I don't mean that how it sounds, but that they don't take it seriously. Does that resonate with you?
No, it does, because I mean, we're talking with people who are saying the same things to us, who are in completely different fields that are not in the nature of art, but now that they're at home, they're having to act in a 9-to-5 way from their home while dealing with things like kids and dogs and partners, and having to remember that they are a professional and that there's a point in time. And we just did a video where we suggested, when you sit down at that desk, remind yourself that's your workspace, and that's the space in which you should be that kind of professional. And I think that's a really reinforcing attitude. If you can do that, if you can just say to yourself, if you avoid saying to yourself, oh, this is just something I do. No. It's your profession. And I think that
Right.
makes you different from other artists that I'm aware. Not all artists, certainly, but some of the artists that I know. So let's go back. One of the things that I know you've done, not only from the perspective of making television programming, but at some point you were being invited to teach others how to leverage their tools, their techniques, their products into other products. Tell me how that's gone. How is it that you can help others? What advice would you give to others to help them leverage that single piece of art, that retablo or that painting or whatever it is, into various other product lines?
I think this is another one where we probably share some parallels here, where you and I just have an innate sense of salesmanship. And then you realize when other people are observing it, they're looking on in awe, like, how did you just do that? And you're going, do what? I was just like, the guy wanted it and I was telling him why he should buy it,
Yeah.
And people around me were asking me, well, how did you do this? How did you get into these shows? How did you get these gigs? How did you get this award? Like, I don't know, I'm just me. But then you stop and you analyze it and you say, well, I guess I do have some technique. It's just sort of, this is how I operate.
Right.
And I remember you talking about, you had packaged your sales technique when I was young, when I was in high school. You used to present on that. And so I treated it like that. I said, well, okay, if I had to give someone, I always start with 5 tips. What are 5 tips I could give someone to sketch better? Say, art is easy to break down into tips, but business is a little more complicated. But I started with presentations like that. Well, 5 tips to sell your artwork online, 5 tips to have better booth sales, because I could isolate, well, here's one thing I do that I don't think other people do. And that evolved into a full presentation and a full philosophy about how to make more money being an artist. And that is broader than, that's just about how to make more money being your authentic self, creating your authentic product. So I think people really responded positively to it. And I saw there was a huge hole for the creative community, that there wasn't a leadership or a system to help them get from, I'm very creative. I like to make things and I want people to buy them, but I don't want to ask them to buy them.
I don't want to have to sell.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of space in between, the guy who sells the sticky tape with the demonstration and an artist selling their art. So I just showed them another way to think about it. And it's been very successful. I've gotten a couple opportunities to present, a couple videos, and you and I have talked about Udemy as a platform, or
Absolutely.
any of the online classrooms as a platform. And so this little space we're in, I'm starting to develop this ancillary space on my property as a dedicated studio for me to record that kind of information, so that I can create another income stream for myself that comes out of art, but is another avenue of art, which I'm passionate about. It's not insincere. I love helping other artists with the business of art.
Yeah,
I don't remember your question. Does that answer?
No, it does. I was going to say there's an old saw that if you're not good enough to dig out the gold, then figure out how to sell shovels to the gold diggers. It's the gold miners, not the gold diggers. Shelley, back to you.
So a lot of people are trying to figure out right now how to pull back from doing in-person things, like you have your shows have been canceled due to the virus, but you have a solid online presence as well. Can you speak to that, how you developed that online presence and how you would recommend to others to do it?
Sure. Yeah, it's just today I was meeting with a person who he has a gallery, and he hasn't invested in online presence. He did pay for a very expensive website, which does do some sales for him, but he was like, okay, I'm ready to learn about this Facebook stuff, and what else can we do? And it has been part of my philosophy to diversify my income. So I do live events, I do wholesale, I do consignment, I do Etsy, I do Facebook sales. So every avenue I could develop to that I could put some initial investment into that would give me residual returns and ongoing returns. I did develop that early on, and I was very, very glad, because right now my only source of income is my online sales. And surprisingly, it's been very strong. There are a lot of people who are out there. I mean, they've got time. There are some people that still have disposable income, and they do want to support the creative community. So they're out there shopping, and there's some significant purchases happening. So it's a nice way for them to support the local creative community without just donating money to one of these grant systems or something like that. So I encourage anyone who's creative, who has a product, if you're not doing an online platform, get on there as soon as possible. And the problem is, I think a lot of people go like, well, what does that mean? Like, do I post my spaghetti sauce on my personal Facebook page? And I look at it like this. So if I create a product, it's now my asset, and I can take that asset and I can project it onto several different platforms simultaneously. And that's the beauty is like, if I only have one painting, it's difficult to show it on 10 different platforms and make it worth it. But if I have a product that I can repeat, like a print of a painting, or a jewelry piece, or a scarf of an image of a painting, then I have a product that I can sell on multiple platforms, day and night, all over the world, to the whole world simultaneously. That's different than being in a booth. That's a different opportunity. And there's a huge difference than having, if people can only do one thing, I encourage them to set up something like an Etsy. Etsy's a great starter place, because what I found from Etsy that distinguishes it, because everybody says, well, I want to get my website shop going. And I think I'm going to say it, I think it's a big mistake. It's a huge investment, and then you've got to control the traffic. What's a good metaphor here, Toby? So you create this website, and it's like having a store, right? And it's on Central Avenue at 7901 Central Avenue. You've got to advertise that and get people in there to come to it and to come check it out and to buy it. And you're the one driving the traffic to it.
Right. Turns you, when you decide to put up a website, you also have to be an expert on online marketing in order to drive traffic to that website. And now you're not just one store on one block on Central. You are a website competing with literally millions of other websites of its kind. So you end up spending a lot more money in marketing towards that website when, like you suggested, put a store up in Etsy and let Etsy do the marketing for you.
Right. So let's use the St. Corona as an example. That one's a good example, because obviously Corona is a very great hashtag word to glom onto. And of course, St. Corona's been hot because the story's been in the news. So I could have the best looking website with the best looking St. Corona image on it, with all the products, the jewelry and the hairpin and the lunchbox. But if I don't have the proper SEO, search engine optimization, to guide people to my website, they will never, ever see it. But Etsy's done that for you already. So they might not be looking on the internet for Sean Wells art. They shouldn't be. But if they're not, and they're on Etsy somewhere in South Dakota looking for Saint Corona, suddenly I have an equal chance to be found among other artists. And the beauty is, if you just take a little bit of education in terms of learning how to rank yourself, I'll tell you right now, I'm competing against maybe 3 other St. Corona images currently on Etsy. and I can play with my tags and my descriptions to rank higher than them, because I can see how they've tagged theirs and how they've ranked theirs, so that I can make sure I'm the first Saint Corona to pop up on Etsy. And I can't compete, like you said, with the volume on the web. I can't compete with the volume of information out on the web.
So
they type in Corona and they get beer photos,
exactly,
way before they see my artwork.
Well, I want you to know that when I did go to Etsy, I wanted to see what was there, and so I did search Saint Corona, and your top left-hand corner of that list. So your whatever you did in terms.
I worked to get there.
Yeah.
It wasn't magic.
Right.
But that's the part where the professional, because I've got these friends who are like, yeah, I put it up on Etsy and it didn't sell.
Right.
It's not magic. It's work. I sat there for hours and hours analyzing what other people were doing, and I enjoyed it, honestly. It was a little bit of a game. What hashtags are we using? I realized I had put ST period Corona because I wanted to consolidate it to make my words more valuable. And I put Saint at the end, so the hashtag was there, but it wasn't the phrase Saint Corona. And I realized that bumped me down. But when I put Saint, SAINT, Corona, I went straight to the top. So those small nuances make a huge difference in getting found. And now like 5 people have that image in their cart. And I've sold several, but it's a hot product.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's not, I'm not lucky. I spent a lot of hours sitting with Etsy and staring at the statistics and playing the game. It's just a game.
Well, the original Retablo has a wonderful place in my home now, and I'm very happy that I made that purchase of it. So you managed. We've got
and you're still healthy.
And I'm still healthy. We got about 5 minutes left. But
what?
Yeah, that's it. I know. It could go on forever, could it? You and I.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to know is you managed. You struggled through the post-2008 period, but you came out of it. You seem to have learned the lessons of how not to experience that struggle again. But we are going to experience an economic downturn here, as well as I do, that people don't buy art during an economic downturn. What are you going to do to make sure you come through this period as unscathed as possible?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think it's still the same formula. It's diversification. I'm still going to be, once we're back online and we can sell, I'm going to go back to wholesale and consignment and just create as many avenues as I can. But in addition to that, what I'm adding is even stronger Etsy and online sales, more harder Facebook marketing, where I'm actually like physically creating coupons and offers that lead people from my Facebook channels to my Etsy shop, and also developing the teaching aspect more. I think the classes is a huge opportunity for me that I haven't tapped into, that I'm pretty excited about. And that, again, is a residual income. I think even in a downturn economy, I've watched more teaching videos now than more learning videos online than I normally do. I have more time on my hands. I think people are more open to change. And, I wanted to talk about that gallery owner that I talked to that was really opening up. It was cool to hear him talk about it. This is someone who just was not going to learn Facebook, an introvert, an artist, and really exceptional gallery owner and salesman, but he just had this Achilles heel with technology. And that's another thing of addressing Shelley's question. Just, we've got to get over that fear of technology. And I was lucky. I was raised by a technophile. I mean, you just had an Apple mouse in my hand at birth, and I was always exposed to technology in a comfortable way. It was like, hey, look, I remember your first video editing program, and we were all excited to get titles on our home videos. And it's come a long way since then. So I have a deep appreciation for the power of the technology, just the fact that we can do this now is pretty exciting. And now we can do this in our backyards with our phones.
Yeah.
Artists can take time-lapse videos and post to YouTube immediately. And there's deep resistance from the young. The millennials are just as bad as the senior citizens. I swear, they are afraid of technology, and I don't get it. I think it is the if we were wizards, it would be our wands.
Yeah,
It's the source
absolutely.
of our power.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a weak metaphor.
No. It was a fair metaphor. I feel the same way. You don't have to convince me, of course, of the value of technology. I spent my entire life in it and continue to do so. I'm always excited about new
thank you
things
for that
coming.
gift.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad that I could. Shelley,
Although, you should have let me use the mouse left-handed.
she is left-handed. I have 6 children, 4 daughters, and 2 of the daughters are left-handed. It's really cute.
Yeah.
And they both have children who are left-handed. So,
That's right.
let's see. Okay, I didn't see any questions. I was looking in the chat room to see if any questions. Shelley, one last question before we get on to our next show.
I can't think of anything.
All right, thank you. Well, Sean, thank you very much for your time. We appreciated your sales personality comes out in the conversations, and I know like I'm sounding kind of biased here, but you just see it, the positive nature of your thoughts, the stick-to-itiveness, the looking at the challenges and overcoming them as obstacles and saying, oh, really? That was a problem? I didn't even notice. Those are all attitudes in sales, whether you're an artist or you're selling technology, that are important. And I love to see them in you and your brothers and sisters. Honestly, it seems to be there's a bit of genetic component in it, but you've mastered it. And you've taken every opportunity to make the transition, as Shelley suggested. And each time you do that, you come out better for it. And I can't imagine that this little period during a time is going to stop you from succeeding and growing. And I really see that. And of course, anytime I can help, once we can get back together, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for joining us. Any last words to our viewers who are all business people, sales people, not many artists, I'm sure, but any last bit of advice you could give them?
Yeah, well, just thank you for letting me get on this channel and to speak about my experience. And I would just encourage people to not be afraid of embracing new ways to think, let go of those old habits and the old securities, and just keep looking for the next big thing that could help you stay afloat and move forward and grow as a person, as a creative, as a business person, a salesperson, whatever it is. We have to let go of our old ideas of ourselves and really figure out who we are deep inside. That's a lifelong journey, and it's way more fun than defining ourselves with one word.
Right. All right. I absolutely agree with that. All right, Sean, thank you for joining us today. Shelley, thank you very much. I'll see you in just a little bit on our next program. For those of you watching, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you found this informative, entertaining, and educational. There is much to be learned from the people that overcome challenges like Sean has and use technology to make not only their lives better, but the lives of their families better. And they've learned how to make those transitions no matter what comes up. And we're at one of those what comes up at this moment of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again next Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Sales Leaders Institute.